I struggle with that question. I don't know that I know the answer, and I want to. I think the reason why I struggle with knowing that answer is I'm still dealing with a lot of shame about being gay, and I I I think that so long as I have that, just this underlying current of it, and it comes up quite a bit, and I see myself changing my behaviors and the way I engage with people, all because I'm ashamed of of being gay. And I think maybe that's the thing that's preventing me from understanding what queer spirit is.
Well, let's start with that then. Since queer spirit was something that we kind of put together 100,000 years ago, at least 20 years ago, right?
Wasn't that long
Wasn't
ago.
that long? You look
Oh,
good though.
You had hair.
I had hair. Right. So talking about queer spirit, because 20 years ago that sounded like, yeah, that's it. That's what we should call this group. That we're going to do these retreats. We're going to get together, and we just kind of rolled with it.
Yeah.
But maybe the question is, you know, if queer spirit worked then, as far as a name and a label or whatever, is it still relevant now? So maybe we should just maybe talk about maybe where queer spirit came from.
Yeah. I'm not even sure how to answer the question about where it came from, other than getting into that big conversation about how other cultures and societal groups looked at traditionally the role of queer folks, and queer meaning non-heteronormative,
Okay.
how they existed in their communities and societies. And at the core of those philosophies was the idea that gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender people played valuable roles. They were key players in their community. So Melodoma Seme, who is from Burkina Faso and from the Dagra people, in his society, those folks were the gatekeepers to the wisdom and the traditions of the spiritual technology of the community. And Melodoma would go as far as to say, our society could not exist without the value that these people brought to society, brought to our community. Harry Hayes in the 70s, who was one of the founders of the radical fairy movements, made an observation that how us as gay people show up in a variety of ways, but consistently in the same places of serving people and creating beauty, and right, we show up as the
The artists.
the artists, the hairdressers, right, the decorators, and he said once, I'm just kind of paraphrasing, is any immigrant society that came to this country brought with it their artisanship and their craftsmanship and their value,
Right.
and established a place for themselves within society. And his argument was that queer folk needed to come to the place to understand and to embrace the value that they brought to society. That there was something unique and particular about our existence, which sounds very congruent to what I've learned through these indigenous cultures. And so for me, queer spirit was about, let's sit in community and dialogue and explore the unique gifts that we bring to society.
Right. Let me pause you there for a second, because that makes sense to me, as far as the value that a certain group of people brought to the broader community, and that's what queer can represent. Flip side, queer has also taken on a connotation that's not good.
Don't ask, don't tell is something that comes to mind.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Right.
You're oddball out. It's shame. I mean, all those kind of connotations have been put on that word. So how do we justify using queer to celebrate the contribution of a certain people in these various cultures?
Well, I would argue that if we're letting others define our essence and use the language to put us in our place, then it's time for us as a societal, as a group of people, to claim the power of that word and to make it our own. And queer is not the only word that has ever been used in derogatory ways,
Right.
in which communities embrace that language
Exactly.
and they own it and they create an identity for themselves around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so my argument is by owning that word, and I really kind of protected this whole notion of queer spirit because that is who we are. We are queer in the domesticated normative way that we've defined it existence. But there's no magic in that until we create it.
And does the magic then show up in the spirit part of queer spirit? Or how does that show up then?
I feel like the word spirit for me, it encapsulates the core and the essence of identity for anyone. And so when I'm saying queer spirit, it's like at the root, at the core, right? We are these powerful, magical beings. And we have this capacity to work and heal our own community, but then to also allow the others outside of our community to benefit from what we bring out. And I don't think identity captures it, queer identity. I don't know that captures it. I can't think of any other word that's spirit that just says it's at the foundation and core of who we are.
Right.
And I would argue in lots of these indigenous societies, the roles that we fulfilled in the native communities, in the Dagra people, we tended to be in this place of intercessors between the community and creation and creator. And so in many ways it took on a shamanic spiritual connotation. And so I think that's the other piece of it too, is for me, queer spirit was a term, first of all, it sounded good. We had some great images attached to it.
Yeah.
But I also think it was a challenge for us, especially in a society like Utah where religious dogma has pushed us out the door. We'll claim our own.
We'll claim our own, yeah. So hearing that, Nick, just as you discuss kind of your background and some of your experiences, hearing that, does that open any doors or shut doors, or what kind of happens when you hear this?
I like the sound of it. I like knowing that indigenous peoples had this type of respect and expectation of queer people. As you were saying, Jerry, is kind of a conduit between the super spiritual space and the people, and I like those ideas, but I still absolutely, given the world that I'm living in, given the physical world I'm living in now, just claim it. You say we just need to claim it for ourselves. I've been struggling to just be okay with myself and the things that I like and I want to do, in comparison to the ideals of what a man should be in this world, or at least in the United States even, and I have trouble just reconciling the difference between those two. But then to then feel like we just have to claim this for ourselves. Well, okay, we do, but that's there are just so many powers, namely organized religion, whether it's the one that is indigenous to this state or that is more popular across the U.S., both of which are still just very much against us, and that is, for most people, that is God, that is the spirit, that is the super high spiritual place. How in the hell could we be the conduit between the two when their doctrines absolutely are, for whatever, clearly saying that we are to not be a part. We will in fact when it comes to Mormonism, we will prevent our families from being in heaven together forever by choosing to be this way. So I guess it's what I struggle with so much, is that I can't get rid of just what I see around me and what I grew up with, and the way that going to seminary for 4 years in high school, what it made me feel like. And I just never got a sense of what you're explaining, and maybe have those indigenous peoples looked at queer people in a in a much more respectful, if not super powerful way even. And that's just not where I'm at. And so it's again, I try to present as a straight man. I guess it's still what I've always just been. And it has so much to do because I don't want to be identified as gay. And if that's where I'm at, I don't understand how I'm going to get to the space where I feel that people recognize me as the conduit between the spiritual and the regular people.
What came to mind for me personally was, because I think I had a similar journey. I'm from California, and went to Catholic schools. A lot of the times I was the only, brown person in the classroom, in my neighborhood, that kind of thing. But it was just something that I kind of got used to. But because that was just my surroundings, that was my upbringing. But once I kind of got the notion that I think I'm different, and I was pretty young, that something feels different. I certainly couldn't identify what that was or put a word to it or a name to it. I just knew I was different, right? But as I got older and the vocabulary was starting to establish, and the images that I saw out there as far as what gay looked like and what gay was supposed to be, or at least how modern culture portrayed homosexuality, and I watched a lot of TV, so I saw a lot of these gay, flamboyant, feminine-looking people on television, and I would look at that, and in my body and brain, I was like, "Oh no,
Yeah.
I am not that," or "I can't be seen as that." One, because I was fearful that I was going to be ostracized,
Absolutely.
just as, well, you can't be that, growing up Catholic, okay? You can't be that, that's wrong, that's a sin. And two, just because of my African American background, kind of a double, ostracized experience. Like, you are no longer, you are, you are no longer a part of, you're not even black.
Yeah.
If
Right.
you're
Right.
that, because there's so much negativity around gay people, homosexuals, if you were black. So it was like, oh no, I couldn't be that. And so, in a similar vein, had to really kind of dial it back, dial it down, do that down low kind of thing, and try to portray myself as straight as possible, for many years. And so I think if I, as a young person at that time, if I heard queer, I would shudder, because I had a certain visual of what that was. It was what I saw on TV, and I didn't want to be that. I am not that. So I didn't have images of what you're just talking about, which I now understand. But back then, I didn't have that understanding at all, and so it really wasn't until much later in my development and evolution and becoming an adult and all of that that was eventually introduced to me, and a lot of it by you, really, and in the work that you do, and starting to, I guess, see, like because you were asking, how do I just claim that? I don't think I just claimed it. It was something that was like this path opened up, and it was just this long path toward it, really. That it wasn't something I could just say, oh, well, that's me, claim it, grab it. It was something I had to gravitate towards. It was always there,
Yeah.
but something I had to walk toward until it finally fit. It was like, oh, I can see it clearly. Like, oh yeah, that is me, and I do have something to offer. I am a queer spirit, and can claim that. But it's not something that just comes automatically.
And exactly, I think you're absolutely right, because there's another part. I'm speaking right now from this place of growing up in rural Utah, and I sometimes feel, because we're here now, I still, when I'm in this state, it brings me back to that place a lot. And you're absolutely right. You have to see a path. You have recognized yourself that, oh, that could be me. And that's exactly what happened to me when I left and lived in Boston for almost 26 years of my life, because that's where I met my partner, and I met his family, and his family was instantly accepting of me because I was openly gay, and they loved him and they loved me. And his mother wrote, her gravy and meatball recipe on a card and gave it to me the first year we were together. She'd never done that for anyone. So those things happened, and I realized a path towards being gay and being more than okay, actually having kind of all the things that normal people seem to have, or not normal people. That's not what I meant to say. Jesus. Woo! I meant just what other people normally have.
Gotcha.
That I felt like exactly the same thing here. Growing up here, it was the voguing queens on Joan on the comedian
Joan Rivers.
Joan Rivers at the time. She had a talk show,
Yes.
and I remember seeing that episode and thinking, "Fuck, I don't really feel like that." And moreover, I know if I'm that in Colville, Utah, I'm going to get killed. Like, I'll be destroyed. And so I knew that I could never be that. I knew exactly. I knew something was different from a very young age. I knew that I just knew that I wasn't like everyone else. But in that struggle to try to find it, with examples that were just dismal. Greg Houganis, I remember that whole thing,
Wow.
the way people talked about it.
Wow.
And there were just a number of things along the way that just kept saying, I can't be that. I'm not going to survive if I'm that. And then to go from leaving and going to school and just being openly gay my entire life out there, and participating in pride parades and AIDS Action Committee, and doing and getting, and trying and building community and having it and having family that's accepting. It did change a lot for me. I guess it does. It does come back to me a lot here when I'm here. It's still, I struggle with it more here than I did out there.
But I think, when we were talking about this queer spirit idea, right? It's not like it's the ideal, right? Like there's the goal. Can we get to that place where we can step into and honor our identities? And what happens is both of you are kind of talking about the process of homophobia and racism and whatever isms are intersecting with all of that. We end up, like, our human development is somewhat stymied because we're developing in silence. Right? If I'm
and not only that, if I may, in conflict also. Always you're developing with this conflict of, I know what I'm supposed to be, but I know what I am. I know that I'm told that I can't be that. And it's, I'm sorry to interrupt that. But
but what happens is the narratives that we start to create for ourselves, then we start looking at, well, where do I see myself in TV? Where do I see myself in history? Where do I see myself, if there's ever a discussion, right? If you grew up in the 80s and 90s, it was, the shadow of HIV, and, our sexuality was labeled as dangerous.
Yeah.
And when you grow up in insulation and isolation, and so the idea of queer spirit was not to say, hey, I've arrived and I'm going to show you how to get there. It's, let's go on this journey together. Let's sit and collaborate. Let's sit and share. Let's explore. Let's celebrate. Right? Let's do that in the context of our own community so that we can start to unravel the stories that have held us back. So that we can step into the place of potentiality and I guess I'm the one that's carrying the label of the queer spirit, but as an older gay man, as someone who, right, I know I'm still working through lots of narratives about where I fit in. how am I perceived by others? It's a process. It's not like you hit the goal, you ring the bell, and you arrived.
There's work to do.
We're always involved in the work.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is we start just reading the cues around us, even within the gay society and community, right? It's a very youth-centric, very body-centric community. And so where do gay people go to process if I'm not fitting into one of the clear cliches of a bear or an otter or a twink or whatever, right? Where do I go just to kind of explore and deconstruct and look at who am I? What do I bring into the world?
Yeah.
And I've been doing this work for 30 years and I'm still deep in my work.
Right. It's interesting that we're kind of deconstructing this word, this label that we've used all these years now, that we're deconstructing it now. Because I don't remember doing something like this back then. It just seemed right.
It sounded good.
It just sounded good. It just sounded good. Like, yeah, let's go with that. We just went with it. But I don't think we kind of dissected it in this way. And I'm liking that we are now, because I think it allows us to look at us and like, well, what are we doing now? What's our objective? What's our goals? What's our intentions as far as the gifts that we have and the gifts that we want to share, and put it out there, right? And I think by doing this, I really heard loud and clear is that this is a journey, that it's not a destination as far as, ringing the bell and winning the prize, because we're all on our own individual paths, and that path is long, and hopefully it stays lit brightly with conversations like this and opportunities of groups and activities, community, right? That there's all these factions out there that allow us to continue to move forward on our path,
For sure.
to fully develop and understand who we are as individuals. Whether you label yourself as twink or bear or whatever, you get to decide that, right? That's on you. That's all you, and that's a celebration of you. And everyone gets to have that process. But like you said, where do we get to process? Where do we do that processing? And that's kind of the big question. And I think that feels to me now like the origin of queer spirit. I know we want to get to later. We don't have to have a conversation now.
I like that, John. Yeah.
But
okay, yeah.
But is that term queer spirit still relevant? We can just kind of let that buzz for a minute. But I think that's where we are as far as defining what queer spirit is. I know it's helping me to understand what it means and what it means to me now and what we're intending to do.
It's work. I have a better understanding now. I like that idea that this is a path, an individual path, but along the way there are these opportunities for community and interaction, and that makes it easier for me to understand queer spirit. That it is about something you hold within you, but it's something that you understand by having these stops along the way, these conversations and community. That is absolutely, for me, one of the reasons why I'm so excited about doing this podcast with both of you, is that I am community deficient when I'm in Utah. It is definitely a supplement that needs to happen more regularly, and it doesn't. And I think that maybe that is what makes me turn to that. I gotta be straight. I gotta let everyone know that that's just who I am, so it doesn't get in the way of being anything. And as opposed to being that, to meeting with fellow queers and having these conversations and understanding better about what that spirit means. And I can see that now. It is an important to have these pit stops along the way, these recharge stations along the way.
I like that. Yeah, for sure. So is it relevant? Is it still relevant? I mean, we created this group and we did some wonderful retreats and activities under this name, Queer Spirit. Fast forward to now, 20 years later, whatever it might be. Is it still relevant?
Absolutely.
I would say, I would say more than ever, because think of those young gay, lesbian, and transgender people behind us that are coming up through the world that we're in right now. And I just brought up "Don't Ask, Don't Tell." That's been repealed, but there was a period of time where all of us, in thinking of making the sacrifice to serve our country, also had to think about keeping our lips shut about who we are, and the insult that is for those people. And that's changed, but unfortunately, as far as I can tell, there's still a possibility that our rights could be challenged, or depending on who's running what. So there's a lot of uncertainty still. So when these young people are looking to television or to the images around them of gay people and gay life, and they're seeing legislation being passed that's anti-gay in this time and age that we're living in, is it still relevant? Is the pursuit of queer spirit relevant? Absolutely, it is. It's a necessity for those people. And so I can see now that it's better. I have a much better understanding of the community, the importance of community, to help those understand about their queer spirit. Right. And so I think it's just as relevant, as important for us to understand that about ourselves now than ever.
Well, and so I see something happening, and I hear it whenever they speak. I think there's a lot of, I'm saying queer in a general sense of LGBTQIA+. Yes. Right. That in some ways we've kind of normalized this whole coming out thing. Hey, I'm gay. I like boys. Hey, I'm a lesbian. I like girls, right? But it's almost like the equation of understanding our uniqueness in the scope of those identities has been missed.
Yes.
Like, we're just like straight people except for who we love.
Right.
Right. And my argument is, there's only so many ways to do a blowjob or to have sex. It's probably the only thing we have in common with straight people.
Exactly.
What is different about us is how we experience the world and how we view it. Yeah. And kind of back to what Harry said, right? We have this lens and often how we see things that is unique and peculiar to who we are. Yes. But I think somehow in our general normative sense of trying to make everyone normal and congruent, right? We don't want to hear about the nuances of what unique perspectives you might bring into it. And so we have a lot of queer folks who haven't really contemplated their uniqueness or the magic that they bring into the world around them. Yeah. Because it's still a fitting in paradigm. And I hear it often in the voice of our young activists who are just wanting rights. But they're not really explaining to people why it's relevant, and I'm not even sure that they've gotten into their own deeper processes around who they are. For instance, I think how I see ageism play out in the queer community is there seems to be very little interest in the history and the perspectives of what I've heard some activists want to fight and argue about why there was so much focus put on marriage equality. And some young activists are even trying to get rid of the terms gay and lesbian. Right? That, we've...
To homogenize us?
Yes. Yes. And I get there's going to be these political shifts, but I feel like it's happening in the absence of, other than the circuit parties or the other platforms that are used, there's not a lot of platforms that are asking us to look within and to explore. Yeah. And I think that, to me, that was the essence of queer spirit. Now, if you want to call it retreat to heaven or whatever, we can call it whatever we want. But I think the relevance of a communal gathering space where we look at the connection of body, mind, and spirit as queer folks is critical.
Shoot, it really is. Really is critical. You raise an interesting point that young people, activists, things like that, kind of out there, fighting for rights, like you said, but not really knowing why they're fighting for those rights, not knowing their true essence, not knowing their uniqueness, that magic. That sparked something in me, and it just made me wonder. It's like, yeah, we're a pretty diverse group as far as our community. It's pretty vast, pretty broad, and there's a lot out there. Yet it makes me raise that question: like, do they know who they really are? Do they know the
Well,
essence?
who are they trying to please? I think
Yeah.
that's the bigger question. And I wonder if a lot of, I'm not saying it can be confined to this, but I would think a lot of it has to do with their parents. And, the challenge of coming out, even though it is, you're right, it's a drive through. I mean, it's a very ubiquitous thing now, coming out. It's like, oh, no big, okay, you're gay, all right, great. But and maybe these people, these young people, these activists that are fighting for, kind of blindly fighting for these rights, are doing it to put on a show, maybe for those loved ones around them, because they're still dealing with some doubt about how they appear in this world. And so it's a chance for them to, to stab their flag in it, to stake their claim.
Yeah.
But I agree. It even today, those young people that are coming out oftentimes are not encouraged to look within, to understand their unique gifts. Not at all.
And I don't want this conversation to sound like we're trying to quench their flame,
not at all.
as
No,
much as,
right.
Look, there's a source of fuel you haven't tapped into yet.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. We don't want to negate in all of what they're doing, because
No,
it's important.
certainly not.
It's certainly important
Of course.
for the generations that are going to come back after them,
Of course,
right?
of course.
And because it certainly has led the way for us, our heritage, etc. But yeah, it's that magic, that's that fire, really, that's giving them that kick to really do this. It's the why,
Well, and I'm thinking every time I start to wonder, is Queer Spirit got a future? I think, we had our little tiny retreat. And we had an individual who was terrified in showing up. And, he can walk and engage in gay circles, but it was the idea of opening up a space of vulnerability.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
I've touched base with this person, a month after the retreat,
Mm-hmm.
and they're still in this deeply powerful place of having revealed things about themselves and about how they experienced that whole process and the trajectory of where it's taking them. And I think, okay, well, I guess Queer Spirit was relevant for him.
For sure.
Right.
Not looking inward, that reflection that did that for him. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And when we talk about reflection, it's interesting. I'm a mental health therapist. It's really alarming to me that even in our profession, right, we've become so template driven in our formulas of how to help people that we, I think, become pretty dismissive of giving people just space in a container to explore. And so I think it's really clear that what we do in Queer Spirit, in my mind, it has therapeutic benefit, but it's not therapy.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about all of us, even as facilitators, stepping in and being part of, I hate that word, vulnerability, being part of an opportunity
I like that.
to really find parts of ourselves that we spend so much time hiding or ignoring because of the narrative of, are you going to like me? Are you going to accept me? And I think that's what happens at these retreats.
They really do. Large or small, those retreats have really touched people, and it doesn't end right there. Like you said, it's, these 2 or 3 days that we're together and we do this fantastic work together, it doesn't stay there. They're taking it with them, and it seems to be long lasting. They're finding something in these exercises and activities that we offer. And like you said, it's not therapy, but it's therapeutic. They're finding pieces that speak to them. And I think that's the beauty of what we offer, because we try to give kind of a buffet of different things to choose from and to experiment. I'm a yoga instructor, and so I'm offering Try this, let's do some yoga, let's move the body, let's do some breath work and some meditation. I've never done meditation, never done yoga before. Don't worry about it. You don't have to be good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Just try it, and just through my narrative or through my instruction and how I teach, and you've seen how I teach, I'm doing my best to kind of sprinkle in some questions for them to ask about themselves. What's holding you back? How do you open yourself up to receive, all that goodness that you deserve? How do you express yourself? All those things I've integrated into the yoga practice. So does it work? I don't know for sure. I don't know if that's the box that is checked as far as, oh, that's the thing that changed my life. I don't know, but hopefully it's adding to the opportunity.
You're giving permission. You're giving people permission to do this type of work, to look inward, to ask themselves what's holding you back from getting into that posture. What's I can see that it's a, we brought this up earlier, but it's an individual path, but it's a charging station along the way. And it definitely, I can hear, I remember myself being that closed up. I got to be straight. I don't want to draw attention. Don't call on me. I don't want anyone to. I just don't. Let me just be. This. let me just be this thing that can just get through this and no one notice. As opposed to stopping at a charging station and giving myself permission to ask those questions like you were bringing up, and to explore myself more deeply, and to maybe open up to others that are there, these things that I find that I would otherwise just on my very miserable path of not being noticedness wouldn't do otherwise.
Let me pose this question, because we're talking about vulnerability, you're talking about opportunity, talking about liberating aspects of ourselves, and as you were talking, I thought, wow, if I could go in and liberate some aspect of myself that I know I hold back on, what would that look like for me? Like, what would I be doing differently in my life? And I think we should all answer that question.
Yeah.
But like this morning, I was thinking, Nick and I have been working on a lot of getting in shape and stronger and what have you, and I was on the treadmill today and feeling pretty good about I thought, if I let go of my story, by next year this time, how far is 5K? How far is a 5K?
It's fucking far as fuck is what
No, how far is it?
I think it's like 2.6 miles or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
I thought, by this summer, I wonder if I could sign up for a 5K and just do it.
Yeah.
And as I was running, I thought, what are the stories I've had? Like, what were the stories I had 6 months ago? What are the stories I had 3 months ago? What's the story I have right now in this moment that keeps me from making that commitment? If I were living more fully in my life, right, I would, I'm not sure what I would be doing differently as a gay man. Because I feel like I'm kind of doing it. I don't have an OnlyFans page yet. But yeah, if you could live more fully as a gay man by letting go of some story that holds you back, what would you be doing differently?
It's making me cry because I'm not answering that question right now. It's that what I get to do, the way in which I get to help people through nutrition and through fitness, and it's I've been working in this space for like 5 years now, and I only take on a few clients because I genuinely enjoy thinking about them, and trying to create the right program for them to do exactly what you're describing right now. That's to open them up and to help change them, and to have the power and the permission to question the things that have been holding you back for so long, and to even fantasize about what things might be like if those things weren't there anymore. And it just it brings me so much joy. I'm sorry, this is gonna look pretty, but it just brings me so much joy to do that, and it that that assures me, because I have this imposter syndrome that I think all of us have growing up gay. It's this, it's, I regret I didn't do every sport. I could have played everyone and done it well, and I didn't. And having this reaction, feeling this way about what you're explaining, it helps me to understand that I'm not the imposter that I think I am, and that I do have value in helping others. And so, to I guess to now answer the question you're posing about if you could let go, if you could pause the story, the narrative that you're playing in your mind all the time to the point that it's exhausting sometimes, if you could pause that and contemplate other things, yeah, I would take advantage of opportunity. When you mentioned the doctor at the VA and just having a sit down and at least to talk with that person, I didn't. I let that go, and I've had, I think that if I could get to that place where I could pause that narrative and I could do some what ifs in a happier place, it would be that I would help more people. That I would just have the confidence to jump in and to help other people, because it is something that just truly fulfills me. And I think, I would do things like, I don't know, Jerry, I have an Instagram and I follow a lot of influencers, and I'm an evidence-based practitioner, and I really enjoy curating a channel of those people that are evidence-based, that are not, selling some bullshit. And I am one of those people, and I know that I need to put myself out there, and I need to establish my brand of that. But it's still that don't see me, don't look at, I don't want judgment. I just want, I don't, it's still that Utah part of me is still part of my narrative. And I just need more charging stations in life, I think, to an opportunity, because I've never had even this opportunity to have conversations like this. And it's,
Yeah.
it's very powerful.
It is powerful, and I resonate with that too. Just for, I don't know, for forever, it seems like I've had that imposter syndrome. Just, I feel I'm just walking through life and just kind of making things up. And I don't know if this is really me, but this is what I'm putting out there, and hopefully people will get it, or I don't know, or it just feels like if it felt false for a long time. But what helps me see my truth in what I'm doing, I mean, I've been teaching yoga for over 20 years. My training in education is in psychology. I certainly have, and I have blended the two. And even with all of that, I still feel like the imposter. I still feel like I'm not the authority in what I do. How can I not?
And let me pause. I'm so sorry to
You're
interrupt,
fine.
but that also helps to kind of illustrate, I guess, for me, the challenge of the queer, of embracing and understanding queer spirit. Because when we're here, especially, and I know who you are, and I know what you've done, and I know the people you have helped, and you still are conflicted with imposter. And so, I get exactly what you just said, just going by in life, just making some shit up, and some people are believing me. Holy shit, like, wow. And it's not, it's how, it's such a, with that imposter shit, that voice. And I told you the other day the way I yell at it. I mean, it's great to talk about.
No.
I mean, it's crazy.
I get
But
it.
I do. I yell. I tell it to get the fuck out. I
Yep.
say, "What the fuck are you doing? You don't belong here." I try to really get angry and aggressive at getting it out. But it is. It's a bitch. And even someone that's had, John, I know that you're an extremely mindful and practitioner, and you help a lot of people, and you would think that would be enough to help quell it, but it's still there sometimes.
It's there sometimes, and I appreciate that. Thank you. But what helps me to get out of that mode, one, I have to talk to myself too. I have to yell at it or give it a name and almost extract it from myself to, what? That's not your truth. I know how to do that. I've developed a way to do that. Not everyone knows how to even do something like that, to kind of talk to yourself or talk to that voice or whatever it is to help extract it. and that's, that's when I only have me to rely on. But I feel more energized and more inspired and more motivated, and more of that. It seems like the clouds really are lifted when I get to talk about it like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
I'm in circle with
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
who get it or are willing to listen, um, that's that liberation. That's what I feel like is opening up inside of me,
Yeah.
and the stories get quelled, and then I can pursue, and I do pursue, that to-do list, that thing, those things. I want to do this, I want to try this, I want to do that. But when things start to close in, I find myself not doing or trying those things
Yeah.
until I do the thing, the work or the play or the magic that I need to do in order to clear the path so I can move forward.
Well, look at what's happening just between the three of us. This is not scripted. We just said, let's pick this topic and talk about it. And look at the layers that have kind of revealed themselves in, 30 minutes? And so imagine if we had a room of 8 to 10 guys.
Yeah.
And then Nick, I'm going to say something to you, but I think it's interesting that the way we try to confront the disagreeable dialogue in our head is with anger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Or what are you doing there? And just an experience that I had when I read the book The Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. He does this whole kind of opening platform around domestication. I remember being really impacted when I read that chapter, and I would frequently catch myself engaging in that kind of stinking thinking is what I would call it.
Stinking thinking.
And I would just pause for a moment, and I'd say, that's not my story.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really, my spirit does not resonate with that idea.
Mm-hmm.
And what is real? I think there's value in just even rewriting the script.
Yeah.
That we can be nurturing to the voice of anger is really the voice of hurt. At the core of anger is hurt.
Yeah.
And so, like, how would you treat a child who's hurt? Right? You would nurture it.
Yeah.
And then you'd say, okay, brush off, go play.
Mm-hmm.
Go.
Yeah,
right?
you're okay.
Yeah,
Right,
you're okay,
Mm-hmm.
go play. And I think there's an approach there that we can learn from to just acknowledge, I don't believe that about myself. I don't believe that narrative. That is not me because I'm this person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the toughest thing, though, because to me, it almost feels like delusion. It almost feels like I remind myself, over the years, I've encountered some characters, and there are some that are definitely just delusional individuals, for various reasons, but getting along just fine, super happy, seemingly successful, this type of thing, and I always wonder if maybe, that's what they're employing, is this degree of delusion to prevent that imposter voice, that negative voice, that negative self-talk thing. They seem to be without it, and in fact, from what I can see, I'm specifically thinking of an individual that is, maybe not one of the most typically attractive people on the planet, but he certainly believes it, and to a point that's, like I said, I've encountered a lot of individuals over the years, and it's just kind of wild to me, but he's an example in my mind that I go back to when I'm in periods of a lot of just, telling myself I'm this and this, and I'm trying to get out of it. I try to employ some delusion to change the narrative, but that's what it feels like to me. It just feels like a temporary gloss over of the crack or whatever with some delusion, but it doesn't feel sustainable.
Right.
I use this analogy a lot when I talk to clients, because I think there's a reason why it feels uncomfortable. John's been to a lot of our trips to Peru, and you fly into Lima. Lima is like a city. And people are like, oh, this is a city. It's Peru, but it's Lima. But when you go from Lima to Cusco, you're shifting worlds and altitudes.
And altitudes.
And attitudes. But what's interesting is watching my guests get off the plane in Peru. They're wearing their pastels and their little hats, and they have all their little travel gear, and they're all excited. By the time they get to the bottom of the stairs, the altitude has hit them, and we're like, and then Peruvians in Cusco move at a much slower pace. It's not things. People aren't in a hurry. The language is all Spanish or Quechua or the other languages happening around there. And it's just there's this interesting transition period where when people get off that plane, they're awkwardly trying to navigate money, awkwardly trying to find the bathroom, moving too fast, passing out, right?
Yes.
But when we've spent 2 weeks out in the Andes, and when we come back, they're so chill. Mm-hmm. They're moving slower. They can talk about the baño, and they can get the money exchanged, and they can chat with people a little bit because they've been immersed in that new experience. It starts out being really awkward, but because they've immersed themselves in the new narrative, that they don't even know that when they've come home, that it so much so that when we hit Atlanta,
oh my gosh,
it is stimulus overload, right?
Yes.
And we're just like,
whoa,
there's too much energy here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to me, self-esteem and self-development is when we are trying to shift those narratives. Of course it's awkward. Of course it's uncomfortable because it's not the language and the narrative that we have become domesticated to accept about ourselves. And so I wouldn't describe it as delusional. It's simply not a place of familiarity. And what I try to encourage my clients to do, and that's why I think the retreats are so powerful, is how do we immerse ourselves into a different way of looking at things in such a way that we start to create a new vocabulary, a new workout, a new approach, right? If working the body takes consistency, self-esteem, again, is not an event.
That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And the piece, and you mentioned this too, when we offer those things, like at a retreat, this opportunity, we give permission. We're giving folks the permission to explore these possibilities
in a container, in a place, in a space that's held for them, that's free from all the crazy shit that could come in and distract. It's this held space for a permission to try a different script, and maybe it's less uncomfortable that way.
Yeah. So that kind of brings us back to queer spirit.
Yeah.
Let's just cancel it.
Yeah. Do we cancel? Queer spirit cancel or proceed?
Well, I would say we started this conversation and I didn't really have an understanding of what it was. And I think that I certainly, what it means to me now is an opportunity with my brothers and sisters to explore growth, to explore, ways that I can start to appreciate myself more for the amazing being that I am, as opposed to the negative and the imposter and the don't look at me, I just want to hide and be a straight person bullshit. Maybe that is my now newer understanding of queer spirit.
So I want to leave it to our listeners, really now, we've had this conversation about queer spirit, how we kind of thought of this term and label for us many years ago, and is it still relevant now? And I think we've kind of come to a place where it feels relevant, probably even more relevant now. But giving it back to our listeners, what do you think? I mean, is queer spirit just that term? Is it relevant? Does it suit you? Does it fit you? Are there other words or other phrases of creating a community that allows, like you said, this safe space for opportunity, for permission to try on different coats, try on different hats, to try on new stories about yourself, to emerge as your authentic self? Are there other words for that? So we'd love to hear from you. Just leave comments in the comment section. Send us an email. We'll certainly put out our email address so you can contact us. Because we'd love to hear from you. We want to continue this conversation. We'll be talking about this and other things. I think we've got a variety of topics that we want to talk about that are relevant to us personally, I think, but also to the broader community. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. This way you won't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes, where we continue to explore fascinating topics and share meaningful stories. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next episode.